Sign the damn paper, Skylar, or I'll have the Chicago PD toss you and your designer life onto the sidewalk before the sun sets. I am done playing mother to a parasite who thinks she owns the place just because she has a high-flying job. The words cut through the air like a serrated blade. I stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at Madeline, the woman who had birthed me, but currently looked at me with more hatred than a stranger. She was wearing the $400 cashmere wrap I'd bought her for her birthday, her face contorted into a mask of cold greed. Behind her, my 21-year-old brother Leo was leaning against the stainless steel fridge I'd paid for, smirking as he tossed a baseball up and down. "It was an accident, Sky," Leo said, his voice dripping with a fake, sickening sweetness. "But let's be honest, your office was depressing. The house needs a better vibe. My music studio is going to look killer in that space." I looked past them toward the door of my home office. On the floor lay the wreckage of my $3,800 professional workstation. My dual monitor setup, the nerve center where I managed risk portfolios for Fortune 500 companies, was now just a pile of jagged glass and bleeding liquid crystal. It hadn't been an accident. There were clear boot prints on the casing. Leo had kicked it into the floor because I had asked him to stop blasting his subwoofers while I was on a closing call with London. "An accident?" I hissed, my voice trembling with a white-hot rage that made my vision blur. "You destroyed my livelihood, Leo. That equipment is worth more than your entire existence. Madeline, are you seriously standing there and defending this? He destroyed my property." Madeline didn't even blink. She stepped forward and slammed a folder onto the marble island. "I don't care about your gadgets, Skylar. You make 6 figures. Go buy another one. What I care about is that this is my house, and I'm tired of your rules. Leo needs that room for his career. If you want to stay here, you move your things to the loft above the garage right now." "The garage loft?" I choked out a bitter, disbelieving laugh. "Madeline, it's January in Chicago. That loft isn't insulated. It smells like gasoline and old tires. It's a storage shed, not a room." "Then pay up or get out," she snapped, her eyes narrowing into icy slits. "The rent is $2,900 a month, plus utilities. I want the first month and a security deposit by midnight, or I'm changing the locks. And don't even think about touching the Wi-Fi router. Leo needs the bandwidth for his uploads." I stared at her, the silence in the kitchen becoming heavy and suffocating. For 3 years, I had been the silent backbone of this family. I had paid off Madeline's credit card debts, covered the mortgage when she forgot, and bailed Leo out of 2 reckless driving charges. I thought if I provided enough, they would finally love me. But as I looked at Madeline's outstretched hand, I realized I wasn't a daughter to her. I was a venture capital fund with no exit strategy. The rage inside me suddenly shifted. It didn't vanish. It crystallized into something sharp, cold, and professional. I am a risk assessment consultant. I get paid to identify vulnerabilities and execute scorched earth protocols. My mother thought she was bullying a scared girl. She didn't realize she was entering a courtroom with a master litigator. "Fine," I said, my voice dropping to a level, terrifying calm. "I'll sign the lease." "Smart move," Leo chuckled, catching his baseball. "Don't forget to pack a blanket, sis. It gets drafty." I grabbed the pen from the counter. My hand didn't shake. I signed the lease for the illegal, unpermitted garage loft with a sharp flourish. Then, I pulled out my checkbook and wrote a check for $5,800. 2 months, I said, sliding the check toward Madeline. "But I want a signed receipt for my records." Madeline snatched the check, her eyes lighting up as she saw the numbers. She didn't even notice the memo line where I had written in thick black ink. "Residential lease payment, Unit 1B garage." She saw a payday, I saw the first piece of evidence in a criminal housing suit. "You have 1 hour to clear out of Leo's new studio," Madeline said, already turning to show the check to her golden boy. "And Skylar, try not to be so dramatic. It's just business." "You're right, Madeline," I whispered as I turned toward the stairs, my heart turning into a block of ice. "It's exactly just business. And business is about to get very, very expensive for you." I spent the next hour dragging my suitcases into the freezing dark loft. The wind whistled through the wooden slats, and the smell of grease was nauseating. I sat on my trunk, the cold seeping into my bones, and pulled out my laptop. I didn't open a moving app. I opened the master admin dashboard for the house's smart home system. The system I had designed, I had installed, and I currently controlled. The war had begun. And they had no idea I already held the kill switch. Đây là chương 2 của câu chuyện. Trong chương này, Skylar bắt đầu triển khai kế hoạch đóng băng cuộc sống của Madeline và Leo từ căn gác mái lạnh lẽo, sử dụng kỹ năng chuyên môn và quyền kiểm soát hệ thống thông minh của mình. The temperature in the garage loft had dropped to a bone-chilling 30 degrees by 2 a.m. Every breath I took came out as a white puff of vapor. I sat on my silver fireproof equipment case, wrapped in a thin trench coat, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop. To Madeline and Leo, I was upstairs sulking in the dark. In reality, I was executing a zero-baggage protocol. In my line of work, when a partnership becomes toxic, you don't try to fix the relationship. You liquidate the assets and vanish. I looked at the family profit and loss spreadsheet I had maintained for years. The numbers were staggering, $52,000 a year. That was the burn rate of my family. I had been pouring money into a black hole of entitlement, but tonight, the funding round was officially closed. Time to see how much that creative energy is worth without a sponsor, I whispered, my fingers dancing across the keys. I logged into the house's central smart hub. Since I had designed the entire network, I held the only administrative override. Madeline and Leo were merely guests with limited permissions. First, I navigated to the Utilities and Security tab. With 3 deliberate clicks, I revoked their access. Immediately, the high-speed fiber connection, the one Leo needed for his career, was severed. I didn't just turn it off. I changed the SS, ID, and encrypted the MAC addresses. To the world, the house at 1424 Oak Street had just fallen off the digital map. Next, I moved to the climate control. I set the main house thermostat to a steady legal minimum of 55 degrees, just enough to keep the pipes from bursting, but low enough to make Madeline's precious designer living room feel like a meat locker. Finally, I engaged the electronic deadbolts on the front and back doors. The house was now a high-tech fortress, and I was the only one with the key. My phone vibrated. A text from Leo. "Yo, Sky, the Wi-Fi is down. Fix it now. I'm in the middle of a high-stakes match and my sponsors are watching. Stop being a bitch and turn it on." I didn't reply. I took a screenshot of the message and moved it into a folder labeled Evidence Harassment. 10 minutes later, the heavy thud of footsteps echoed from the garage below. The ladder rattled as Leo climbed up, his face red with fury, breath smelling of the expensive bourbon he'd stolen from my private collection. He shoved the loft door open, the light from the garage spilling in. "What the hell did you do?" he roared, shivering in his silk pajamas. "The internet is out. The heat is dying. Mom is freaking out. Fix it, or I swear to God, I'll throw the rest of your shit into the street." I didn't look up from my screen. "I'm a tenant now, Leo, remember? I pay for the loft. I don't pay for the technical support of the main house. If the internet is down, call the provider. Oh, wait, the account is in my name, and I canceled the service 5 minutes ago. You'll have to open your own account. They require a credit check and a $500 deposit. Good luck with that. You snake! Leo lunged toward me, but I didn't flinch. I simply turned my laptop screen toward him. It showed a live feed from the garage security camera, recording his every move. Go ahead, Leo. Touch me, I said, my voice as cold as the ice forming on the loft window. Assault on a tenant is a felony. I have the lease we signed tonight. I have the check Madeline cashed. And I have this camera. Do you want to spend the night in a cell? Or do you want to go back to your freezing studio? Leo stopped, his fist clenched, shaking with a mix of rage and genuine fear. He had never seen me like this. He was used to the sister who apologized for his mistakes. He wasn't prepared for the woman who calculated them. Mom is going to kill you, he spat, retreating toward the ladder. You're dead to this family. The family died when you smashed my monitors, Leo, I replied calmly. Now close the door. You're letting the cold air out of my luxury loft. As his footsteps faded, I felt a strange sense of peace. Most people would have screamed, most would have cried, but I was a professional. I had already secured a suite at the Kensington downtown, a corporate high-rise with 24-hour security and a view of the skyline. I picked up my briefcase. I wasn't taking the furniture or the clothes. I was leaving the props of a life I no longer wanted. I walked down the ladder, slipped into the Uber Black waiting at the curb, and didn't look back. The next morning, the real storm would hit. Madeline would wake up to a house with no heat, no internet, and a legal notice that would change her life forever. I woke up at 10 a.m. in my suite at the Kensington. The silence was thick, expensive, and smelled of fresh linen, a stark contrast to the gasoline-scented garage I'd escaped hours ago. I sipped an espresso, looking out at the Chicago skyline, and decided it was time to check the damage. My phone was a graveyard of notifications. 14 missed calls from Madeline. 22 frantic, increasingly violent texts from Leo. But it was the Facebook notification that caught my eye. Madeline Thorne tagged you in a post. I clicked. My mother had gone for the jugular. She had posted a photo of herself wrapped in a blanket, sitting in her darkened living room, looking frail and heartbroken. I am devastated to share that my own daughter, Skylar, has abandoned her family, the caption read. She hacked our home, cut our heat in the middle of winter, and left her younger brother in the dark. She moved out in the night like a thief, leaving us freezing and broke. I never thought I'd raise a snake in my own garden. Please pray for us. The comments were already a cesspool of relatives and church friends. Disgraceful! How could she do this after everything you did for her? Money has truly ruined her soul. I didn't feel the sting of shame she expected. Instead, I felt a surge of professional satisfaction. I took a screenshot, saved it to the liquidation folder, and emailed it to my attorney. She just admitted it, I whispered to the empty room. She publicly confessed that I am the sole provider for the house's basic utilities. She just proved dependency. At 1 p.m., the buzzer to my suite rang. My blood turned to ice for a split second. I walked to the video intercom. On the screen, Madeline stood in the lobby, her face flushed red, arguing with a very uncomfortable-looking security guard. Beside her was Leo, looking sullen in a heavy parka. They had 3 oversized suitcases with them. Ma'am, the doorman's voice crackled. A Mrs. Thorne claims there is a family emergency. She says she has a right to come up. She has no rights here, I said into the intercom. I knew how she'd found me. The family cellular plan. I'd canceled my payment, but I hadn't removed my GPS tag before the service cut. A rookie mistake, but one I could use. I watched the screen. Madeline started wailing, real theatrical tears. Skylar, open this door. We have no heat. Leo can't work. You can't just throw your mother away like trash. I know you're up there in your luxury nest while we suffer." A small crowd was gathering in the lobby. Madeline was banking on my public shame. She thought I would let her in just to stop the scene. She thought my reputation as a high-end consultant couldn't handle the scandal of a heartless daughter. She was wrong. My reputation was built on being heartless when the numbers didn't add up. I pressed the talk button. "Listen carefully, Madeline. If you don't leave in 60 seconds, I'm calling the police to report a trespassing and harassment. And before you scream again, remember the paper I signed last night? You forced me to sign a lease for an illegal, uninsulated garage unit. In the state of Illinois, renting a non-residential space as a dwelling is a Class A misdemeanor. Every dollar I've paid you for the last 3 years just became wrongful enrichment." Madeline froze, her mouth half open. Leo looked at her, confused. "What is she talking about, Mom?" "It means," I continued, my voice echoing through the lobby speakers, "that you don't have a daughter anymore. You have a creditor, and I'm here to collect. Leave. Now." I watched as security finally escorted them out. Madeline didn't look like a victim anymore. She looked like a cornered animal. As the glass doors shut behind them, an email arrived in my inbox. Subject: legal notice. Intent to sue. Her strip mall lawyer was demanding $15,000 for emotional distress and illegal abandonment of a verbal lease. I smiled. They had walked right into the trap. By suing me over that lease, they were officially placing the garage loft on the court's record. They were about to learn that in the world of risk assessment, you never start a fire unless you own the water. The small, dimly lit office of my attorney, Marcus, felt like a war room. On the mahogany desk lay the single most important document of my life, the garage lease Madeline had forced me to sign. To her, it was a tool of extortion. To me, it was a confession. "She really did it," Marcus said, shaking his head as he reviewed the photos of the loft. "No insulation, exposed wiring next to gas cans, and the only exit is a rickety wooden ladder. Skylar, this isn't just a bad apartment. This is a Class A misdemeanor under the Illinois Residential Tenants' Right to Repair Act." "I know," I said, leaning back, my eyes cold and focused. "And she cashed the check. I have the digital receipt from the bank showing she deposited the $5,800 into her personal account. She didn't just ask for money. She officially entered into a commercial landlord-tenant relationship for an uninhabitable, illegal dwelling." The rage that had been burning inside me since that night in the kitchen had transformed. It was no longer a fire. It was a precise, ice-cold laser. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to dismantle their world brick by brick, using the very greed they had used to choke me. "What's the move?" Marcus asked. "Total liquidation," I replied. By suing me for abandonment, their lawyer inadvertently put that lease on the public record. Now, we countersue. We claim a full refund of all rent paid under duress for the last 3 years, since that house was technically used as a fraudulent rental property. Plus, I want damages for the destroyed equipment and the illegal lockout she attempted when I moved to the Kensington. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a voice note from Leo. I put it on speaker. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Mom's crying every night because the bank called about the mortgage. The smart home system is locked and no one can fix it. If you don't come back here and pay the bills, I'm going to your firm. I'll tell your boss you're a psycho who leaves her family to freeze. Turn the heat back on, you bitch!" Marcus looked at me, horrified. I just smiled and hit save. "That's evidence exhibit D, extortion and harassment," I said calmly. "He just admitted on tape that they are financially dependent on me and are attempting to sabotage my professional reputation to force payment." I stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city was moving, people rushing to their homes. I thought about that house, The house I had turned into a home with my own sweat and salary, only to be treated like a trespasser. Marcus, send the process server to the house tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I want them served while Leo is still in bed and Madeline is having her morning coffee. Let's see how she likes the business side of this relationship. And the settlement demand? There is no settlement, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet office. I want the house sold to cover the clawback. I want Leo in a job where he actually has to sweat for $1. And I want Madeline to realize that the ATM didn't just break. It decided to collect interest. As I left the office, I felt a strange sense of power. Madeline thought she was the one in control because she had her name on a deed. She forgot that in the modern world, power isn't about who owns the walls. It's about who knows how to tear them down. The conference room was suffocatingly white, smelling of expensive furniture polish and the bitter scent of stale coffee. Madeline sat across from me, her eyes rimmed with red, her hands trembling as she clutched a cheap faux leather handbag. Beside her, Leo looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of someone who had finally realized that creative energy couldn't pay for a lawyer. Their attorney, a man in a wrinkled suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, cleared his throat. Ms. Thorne, my client is prepared to drop the abandonment suit if you agree to a $10,000 settlement and return to the property to restore the, digital infrastructure. I didn't speak. I didn't even look at them. I leaned back in my leather chair and slid a thick blue folder across the table toward their lawyer. That won't be happening, I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. Within that folder, you'll find a copy of the lease my mother forced me to sign for the garage loft. You'll also find a report from a private building inspector I hired 48 hours ago. The loft has no secondary egress, no insulation, and the wiring is a fire hazard. It's an illegal dwelling. The lawyer's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. I saw the blood drain from Madeline's face. Under Illinois law, I continued, renting an illegal unit doesn't just void the lease. It triggers a full rent clawback. I have the canceled checks for every mortgage payment, every utility contribution, and every dime I've funneled into that house for the last 3 years under the guise of rent, totaling $114,000. Skylar, please, Madeline whispered, her voice cracking. We're family. You can't do this to your own mother. Family? I leaned forward, the white light of the room reflecting in my eyes. Family doesn't smash a daughter's livelihood. Family doesn't extort a sister for a freezing garage while they sleep in a bed she paid for. You didn't want a daughter, Madeline. You wanted a landlord. So, let's be professional. I tapped the final page of the folder. I'm not just asking for the rent back. I've already filed a formal complaint with the city's housing department. The fines for the illegal unit alone will exceed $20,000. The mortgage company has also been notified that the property is being used for illegal rental income, which violates your loan terms. Leo suddenly stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. You're ruining us! Where are we supposed to go? I have a career! You have a warehouse shift at the Amazon Center starting Monday, Leo, I said, sliding a printout of his new employment verification, which I had helped facilitate through a contact, across the table. And Madeline, I've purchased the debt on your car. You have 30 days to pay the balance, or it will be repossessed. The room went silent. The risk had been fully mitigated. The asset had been liquidated. I'm giving you one way out, I said, standing up and buttoning my coat. Sign this release. You drop all claims, you sell the house to cover the clawback, and you never contact me again. No Facebook posts, no phone calls, no emergencies. If I see my name on your lips one more time, I will execute the full judgment, and take every brick of that house. Madeline looked at the paper, then at me. For the first time in my life, she looked at me with respect. But it was the respect of the defeated. She signed. 6 months later, I sat on the balcony of my new penthouse, the Chicago skyline sparkling like a sea of diamonds below me. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a banking app. Wire transfer received, $85,000. Final settlement. I opened my laptop one last time and navigated to the folder labeled Project Liquidation. I highlighted the entire directory, the screenshots of the insults, the photos of the broken monitors, the recordings of Leo's threats. I pressed delete. The account was closed. The ledger was balanced. I hadn't lost a family. I had escaped a parasite. I took a sip of my wine, the cool evening air finally feeling like freedom instead of a threat. For the first time in 26 years, I didn't owe anyone anything. And more importantly, nobody owed me. I was Skylar Thorne. I was a risk assessment consultant, and I had never felt more secure. Don't let your kindness be mistaken for weakness, even with family. Family should back you up, not bleed you dry. Stay kind, but keep your guard up. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to save yourself. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. Catch you in the next one.